week 4 of the NFL season, and it's the biggest game of the season so far for the Bills as they take on the Miami Dolphins. We're here with our WGRZ Bills insider Vic Carucci to preview this matchup. And Vic, this is a matchup that I know a lot of people, not just here in Buffalo, not just out in South Florida, around the league, are looking forward to watching this weekend.
Oh, without a doubt. First of all, it's the game of week 4, and there isn't even a close second when you look at the entire week 4 slate. And it's still amazing to me that this is in the 1 o'clock time slot as opposed to, the late afternoon start, which gets a much bigger TV audience, or certainly Sunday night football. And it's astounding that we're going to see these two teams in week 4 in one of the most anticipated matchups of the season. I know that Jet matchup with Aaron Rodgers was huge, but this one to me takes it to another level.
1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock. We know those Bills fans are going to be tailgating out there in Orchard Park, but someone who won't be on the field Sunday is Jordan Poyer. Sean McDermott saying that the safety, he's not going to play on Sunday. That's the kind of first really big injury bug kind of situation for Buffalo in which one of their starters isn't going to play this season. Just how do you see that affecting this matchup?
I think it's a hit to their defense to lose a player of Jordan Poyer's quality. Now, physically, I don't know if he's been as up to it in terms of his speed and everything as he has in previous years. Looks to be slowing down just a little bit, but his presence, his savvy, his instincts, all of that are so vital to this defense. They'll be missing a lot without him. And for a team that plays a lot of nickel defense, losing that dimension when they are defensive back heavy is something to look at. Now, his replacement, Taylor Rapp, is adequate, is a good player. I still think Jordan Poyer has a bit of an edge there, but at least in terms of physical approach when it comes to facing the run, and they're in nickel a lot, or they have been when the opponent's been running the football, having a guy like Taylor Rapp on the field is helpful.
And this is where you kind of see that benefit of the Bills having depth at several positions, including at safety. Like you mentioned, they bring Taylor Rapp in the summer. They also have Damar Hamlin, who's been inactive the first few games of the season. Could we possibly see him be active for this game against Miami?
The numbers would suggest that this would be his first opportunity to play just because they're without a safety, and you just keep kind of moving up the depth chart. The fact that he hasn't played at all in this regular season would be a concern for me, just putting him out there, not so much for fear of the physical part of it. I mean, that's always in the back of everyone's mind when we think of what Damar Hamlin went through, but just the readiness to perform at a high enough level. I mean, he certainly has not had the punishment of a 3-game season heading into game 4, and that could be a helpful thing from a speed and just having his legs under him and all of that. But it will be interesting to just see if he does get his first action of the season in this game.
I'm going to step back. We were talking about how this very anticipated matchup, not just because they're two great teams, but two great teams that are within the same division in the AFC East. Stephon Diggs talking earlier in the week, he said that teams like to say that each game counts the same, but these early season division games almost count for 2 a little bit. Do you agree with that sentiment, and just how big is this game overall in the AFC East race for both teams?
I think it's huge, even though it's only week 4, given that Buffalo is 0-1 in its division with that Jets loss. So you want to make up ground there. You also want to establish yourself with the other presumed challenger for the division championship, which the Bills, of course, have owned. And that would be this Dolphins team. And you have the top 2 scoring teams in the league squaring off. You have 2 quarterbacks in Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa who are in that MVP conversation. And their performances in this game would figure to influence the way that MVP voting would go at the end of the year. Still a lot of season left, but these are the kind of matchups people pay attention to. And then all of that offensive explosiveness on both sides is another thing to see just how they come together, because I frankly think this is a more potent Dolphin team than the Bills have faced in recent years.
Talk about Tua playing at an MVP level, and we've seen him when he's healthy, he's been able to perform at a very high level for this Dolphins offense. He's executing that Mike McDaniel offense. He has it firing on all cylinders. The Dolphins lead the league in points per game, pass yards per game, rush yards per game. Just how big of a challenge is this for the Bills defense, and what's going to be Sean McDermott as the Bills defensive play caller, his first big challenge of this season?
It will be the biggest challenge of Sean McDermott's dual role now as head coach and defensive coordinator, figuring out a way to stop what other teams have been unable to do. And that is an offense that can attack you in so many different ways. All the pre-snap motion that Mike McDaniel puts out there and utilizes these players, especially Tyreek Hill, like Canadian Football League guys, having them build up speed before they cross the line of scrimmage, and it gives them a distinctive edge. And all of that movement, creating those big gaps in the secondary that Tua Tagovailoa can exploit with his arm. And the other thing is you have a quarterback in Tua who has the fastest release, according to NFL Next Gen stats, of any player in the league, getting the ball out of his hand. That's a big factor in a game like this, where presumably the Dolphins are facing the best defensive front they're going to see, or certainly one of the best. And you're talking about a front that had 9 sacks last week against Sam Howell. I think that's a bit of an aberration, but it's an indication of how good that front is. And it's also a compliment to Sean McDermott in terms of how he mixes things up, moves these guys around, not necessarily a lot of blitzing, but creates unfavorable matchups for the offense or favorable for the defense with pass rushers. That is going to be the core of this game. You're not going to necessarily have anybody who can match the speed that the Dolphins are presenting at wide receiver with Hill and Jalen Waddle, and all the way through the running back room, Raheem Mostert. They are very fast guys. These guys run in the 20 plus, I think it's almost 22 miles an hour. They've been clocked. These are fast humans. And the best way to handle this is, of course, getting pressure onto making him uncomfortable, getting him off his mark, just making life very difficult for him in the pocket.
I know in that playoff game, they played Skylar Thompson, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've played against Tua and the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel before. How much do they draw from these past experiences that they've had against him? I know they have new pieces this year, like the new running back, Devon Achane out of A&M. He's one of the fastest guys on the team already. But how much do they draw from the games that they've already played against this system?
Well, I really think it's a big difference from just last year, where you had 3 games decided in that 3-point range against the Dolphins. And of course, the Dolphins splitting that regular season series with Buffalo. I think it's the biggest concern for Buffalo's offense is matching up against Vic Fangio, who is the defensive coordinator and maybe the best acquisition of all that the Dolphins made in the offseason, because he may not have been the best head coach, but he is a terrific defensive coordinator who has such a coaching tree on defense throughout the NFL, so well respected. Even Sean McDermott acknowledged how much he has picked the brain of Vic Fangio through his time to just find out all the different concepts and scheming that Fangio does. So I think that's something to look at here, is how he utilizes, how Fangio will utilize the defensive talent the Dolphins have to their best advantage against the Bills.
Talking with Diggs earlier in the week, he also talked about how Fangio has come in and they have a new defensive scheme. But the guys in that secondary, like Xavier Howard and Javon Holland, the Bills wide receivers, they're familiar with them. They've played against them before. How much does that familiarity impact what the Bills can do on offense, and how much does it just come down to Josh Allen maybe being Josh Allen? We talk about Tua being an MVP candidate, but Josh Allen is right there as well.
I think the familiarity for both teams is something that is more likely to create a closer game competitively, just because you tend to feel each other out. It's almost like you're watching a heavyweight fight, where a championship where the boxers are measuring each other in the ring. And I think there's some of that in play here, where the players have a good book on each other, those individual matchups, like you say, Stephon Diggs going up against the Dolphins defensive backs and anticipating much of what they're going to do against him and vice versa. And the real challenge to me, though, is how Mike McDaniel has changed his approach to incorporating more of a run game. It was a priority that he made for himself and for this team at the end of last year to help them get over that hump and be more competitive. And I think that's a crucial difference. And the other crucial difference strategically is Sean McDermott running the Bills defense, playing it very differently there. So that fascinates me as much as anything, the X and O battle, the chess match, if you will, between these coaches.
Week 1, we saw bad Josh Allen. Week 2, we saw great Josh Allen. Week 3, we kind of saw somewhere in the middle. You know, he had another one of those interceptions where he just tossed it downfield, but overall, he played a very solid game. How much of kind of that composed, measured Josh Allen do we need to see, knowing that on the other side is an offense that leads the league in scoring, that just put up 70 against the Broncos? And can that make this game a track meet where Allen might feel like he needs to have those big signature plays that we've seen from him?
It's going to be interesting to see how much the flow of this game affects his patience and maybe causes Josh to be a bit less patient than he's been these last 2 weeks when he has played some of his best football, because he's been poised, because he hasn't been forcing things. And I think that's really the key here, is how the game goes in terms of the Dolphins' ability to score. We know how prolific a scoring team they are. And if all of a sudden they're putting up a lot of points early on, it wouldn't shock anyone to see Josh get into that mode of wanting to score quickly as well and push the ball down the field and not necessarily wait and let things unfold. I still think he is at his best when he's been that guy. And the guy who we saw in that Jet game, now that's probably an extreme, but the mistakes that came from that philosophy, that approach, I think are the kinds of things you've got to avoid here. Remember, in that first game in Miami last year, and the big topic of conversation was how hot it was and how, almost impossible those playing conditions were. But really, for the Bills, that was a game where they just self-destructed. I'm not going to blame the Heat for that. I'm going to blame the Bills for just continually shooting themselves in the foot throughout that game. There were almost a half dozen times where mistakes cost them in a close game. And so that can't happen, I don't think, against a team that's as good and as prolific as the Dolphins are. So the question becomes, can the Bills defense help set a tone that doesn't let this game start to turn into a track meet? Because once it does, that's when you're going to see, I think, more of the Josh Allen where, again, the Superman cape comes on and he's going all over the place as a thrower and a runner.
We'll end with this question. Obviously, it's a big game, and two teams that fancy themselves as Super Bowl contenders. The league views them as that as well. What does winning this game in Week 4 mean for either team, but especially for Buffalo, as it would be their biggest win of the season so far?
I think that it means more than just a Week 4 game, because it would set a significant tone in terms of where this team is in the pecking order of the AFC and even more than that, the NFL. Because when you look at the schedule beyond this game, there are so many opportunities, it would seem, for them to get on a run if they get out of this game with a win. And again, if Miami ends up winning this game, it's not the season is over for Buffalo by any stretch of the imagination, because again, they can rebound pretty quickly. But a lot of us will be paying close attention to see, just as a measuring stick for both sides, what this will look like when it's over.
Thank you very much. Certainly a game that we're all looking forward to watching, and then we'll catch up with you on the flip side to digest everything that happens with this game, and then next week look ahead to London. But take care for now, and again, good catching up with you.
Same to you, Jonathan.